we're live on YouTube and Facebook. We started, and you're 100% right. But when you first started, there was a lot of people that were doubting you. I mean, I remember listening to some podcasts where they were like, "That's not going to work."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me just tell you something. It's great in telling the story and to say that, oh gosh, it all worked. There were moments when that business was not working. And these are the stories that you don't hear, and some of the, stories of, the days where, things were really close to not making it, as a business. And, those aren't the stories that are always told, but those are the stories, honestly, that, really, it's at those times when you see what you're made of, what the team's made of, and if you're going to make it. And so, I tell a lot of people, and I do a lot of discussions at, frankly, at my alma mater at WashU and the business school. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we always have this discussion because I think, people really think that, being an entrepreneur is great, and it is, but it's not for everybody. And I tell people there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with working for a great company, having a great steady job that you grow in your career. There is a lot of myth around becoming an entrepreneur. It is hard. You got to have the stomach for it. There are a lot of ups and downs. There are highs and there are tremendous lows. And the funny thing is the story of Bardstown is no different in that regard. But it is a story of an amazing team of people that came together in a moment in time and created what you see there today. And that is the story.
Yeah, you guys, even what you had to go through with losing your main partner. That was a difficult time, and everything that went and then to come back from that, evolve it in. Right now, it just never stops. All it is expansion. But
absolutely.
But
that's right.
But then, the last thing we'll talk about before we go live, and I'll explain everything when not live, we'll start recording the audio podcast along with all the live stuff. The aspect of you, where you were before, like you had been at Kentucky Owl, and I was talking to Randy, and it looked like that you were out of it. Incomplete. You were going to leave. You were leaving the board of and everything, and then all of a sudden, we get this great announcement that I believe it's in 2024, right? March is what you're shooting for.
We start operations in July.
In July.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Shooting for that, which is really super exciting. And then you were actually the president of the board, correct? Then you're
talking for the Bourbon Festival?
Yeah.
Oh yes. No. Yeah. So I am the chairman of the Bourbon Festival. This is my last year as chairman, and then Cordell Lawrence from Peerless will be taking over. But I will be on the board for the next several years. So the leadership of the board and our structure there is very much in place and intact. That's something at a festival is something that is absolutely something I'm extremely passionate about. And we're fully dedicated to continuing to watch and be part of the growth of that festival.
Well, as we've, the times that I've met with you, you've always made, you have that personality that you make somebody feel welcome, and we really appreciated that, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on tonight, because there's your passion for bourbon and good whiskey is there.
Not only the passion for bourbon and good whiskey, but just for the industry itself. You can see it in everything that you talk about and your reaction to it and everything that you're doing for it, and the community, like you've always been saying, that you're always trying to build up and help the community out too.
Well, these are important things, and I absolutely believe in it. It's why when I started Bardstown, the first thing that the founders did. So myself, Dan Lind, who was the CFO, Garnett Black, who was our VP of Human Resources and Hospitality. The three founders moved to Bardstown. We lived here. Garnett moved here from Virginia with her husband. Dan Lind moved his family from London, England, here, who was my college roommate and former business partner in a number of businesses. But that's really important because that sent, when you ask, you mentioned that there were a lot of people doubting us. The first signal that needed to be sent was that we were all in. And so I personally don't think, if you really have to be part of the community, especially when you're establishing a new business and one that, the community was counting on us. I mean, they made a huge bet with us, and we were determined not to let them down.
Yeah, that's important too. And once you get the community behind you, then it's all, usually all up from there, right?
It does. It's a big help, and it's a very important stepping stone. I think that, I am one that fundamentally believes, the business has a responsibility to, support the community, and it's a symbiotic relationship. It is one that, it's going to give and take, and that's really important. It's something that we look at, in every way. And when we develop these businesses, you see it at the festival, you see it at Bardstown, and it's something that you see at Whiskey House as well in Elizabethtown. And we have an incredible relationship with the community there.
Yeah, it seems like a great place to put the distillery. There's no doubt about it. It's not like there's a lot of distilleries. It's still within the area of the main triangle. It's just a little bit south, but it's not like you're in Owensboro.
It's very much dictated, and we'll get into that in this discussion, but it's very much dictated by having the needed infrastructure. So when you plan to do advanced manufacturing on the scale that we are doing, with the efficiencies and with the technology, and then being able to serve an international market and have rail on property and all of that, you start really kind of narrowing down only so many places that are going to be able to support that, from, a sewer, water, gas, electrical, rail, all of the necessary components that you line up. It doesn't, it's not like those exist everywhere. So luckily we found it in Elizabethtown, but we looked at the entire state.
Okay. So you were looking at logistics completely from all the different places where the best place was to do it. And then also, I'm sure cost and taxes and community, but also, putting a place like that in there, the community, that's why the relationship is such an important thing, because it creates so many jobs. I mean, the community defines the distillery at one point because of the quality of people that you're going to be hiring.
There's no question, and the proximity to the bourbon capital of the world and to the rest of the industry, and the job market and pool is obviously very important too. But at the end of the day, the business model that we have developed is built on having, you must have the critical infrastructure in order to be able to produce at that scale and at that cost, and to be able to have the flexibility to grow the business and evolve. So it starts with the infrastructure, and so that was one of the really critical defining aspects of the project that brought us to Elizabethtown. Plus the fact that we have just a wonderful relationship with the leadership of Elizabethtown, and had it for some time. It actually goes back to running the restaurant when we opened the restaurant at Bardstown. I don't know if you were ever there in that first year. It was really a magical place. It's totally different than what you know of the restaurant at Bardstown now. It was open for dinner. We had a 6-month waiting list to get in. I mean, it was packed. We had a program with the J1 program. We had 20 culinary students from South Africa. We housed them. We provided transportation. It was an environment that was really no other way to describe it but fun and magical. And, at that time, we had so many people that came locally on the trail, and we just happened to meet all the leadership of Elizabethtown. They would come for dinner every Friday and Saturday night. I lived in that restaurant when we started that, because we had no restaurant experience. We just built that. We started it. We created it. We brought in some great talent, but we lived in the restaurant. It was a great way to meet people, and it's funny how one thing leads to another. And that actually was part of how we met so many of the people that were critical to bringing us to Elizabethtown.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Let's get the actual audio podcast started. I'm gonna hit start recording. We're gonna have a 30-second spot you won't be able to hear that we just kind of, and then I'm gonna play our theme song, and then we'll get right back into this. All right. That was a lot.
That's great.
A lot of information already. All right, here we go.
Drinking bourbon, sipping on some scotch. We get a little wild, but it's sure fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every burning room. Man, it's all sunshine, but we're telling the truth. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, raisins in hell and making some noise. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. We're here to have fun and we hope you enjoy. We're here to have fun. Yeah.
All right. Welcome back to another podcast of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. We got a special podcast tonight. We have a special guest on. First time that he's been on, David Mandell. Welcome, David. David.
You guys, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So David is the CEO of the I gotta get this
House.
The Whiskey House of Kentucky. And that is something that you're going to be hearing a lot more of. And normally I give a bunch of promotion type stuff, but tonight there's a lot to get into. So let's get right into it with David. I'm so excited to have you here. And already in the pre-talk, you've been giving us so much information already. But just to start off right now, talk about what you did before you ever got into this. I mean, it's just like it was a completely different profession, right? Than this.
Well, if we're going way back, and I hate saying that now because I'm starting to realize, how old I'm getting, and that is not fun at all.
What are you, like 38?
Oh, God bless you. I mean, that's just great. Let's pretend that is the case. And so when I started my career, I started as a lawyer, practicing law in Philadelphia. I went to law school and I went to undergrad at WashU, and I was a history major and English minor. And, never did I imagine, frankly, I ever really imagine that I would ever be in business. I certainly never thought that I would be in alcohol. But it was one of those things where, life, is in many ways a process of elimination. And I think you figure out what you don't like faster than you figure out what you do like. And so for me, it was very much, a journey. And, I was, practicing in a law firm in Philadelphia, a great firm, Blank Rome. And, I had in my career, so many people, gave me, really wonderful opportunities to take, leadership roles. And they were opportunities that, that come to you and you have to run with them. And I had an opportunity at the time. I was asked, we did a lot of work in Philadelphia. Frankly, we did a lot of actually election law work. And I was asked to go on the recount for George W. Bush at the time. And I was sent to Florida and I was given 3 counties down there to do military ballot arguments. If you remember back in the days with the hanging chads, God, it seems like so long ago. It was a whole different issue on the West Coast. And I did that. And I came back after the Supreme Court ruled, and I was, in my early 20s at the time. And the chairman of the firm asked me if, I was interested in a political position. Sure. Yeah, of course, right? I mean, I'm in my early 20s. So I end up, this is right before 9/11, going down and interviewing at the White House. And after 9/11, I ended up with the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board as her counsel. Spent a year there, and she was appointed administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. I went over there as chief of staff. I spent almost 5 years with her there. And it was, during that time, I was on a trip. And we came up, was out drinking Red Bull and vodka with my roommate, Dan Lind, who was the CFO of Bardstown and one of the founders of Bardstown, and is the CFO and one of the founders of Whiskey House. And we started the first caffeinated alcohol, caffeinated vodka, at the time. And that's how we got into the spirits business, knowing absolutely nothing about what we were doing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
So this is a question that I find that when you're in the spirits industry, especially in the whiskey industry, and then the bourbon industry, the whiskey industry and the bourbon industry are similar, except with whiskey, as you start to expand out and you get into scotches and that type of thing, what would you say? The bourbon industry is so close knit and tied together amongst the distilleries, even from state to state. There's people in Indiana that know people in Kentucky. There's people in Ohio that, everybody's the actual making of that whiskey, that industry, people from other states come up Texas, they come up to Kentucky. Kentucky people go down to New Orleans. I mean, it's just like when it comes to bourbon, there's this, it's almost like a family. Then when it comes to whiskey, then you're adding in the cousins and the aunts and the uncles. But then I found when you expand out to the other, vodka, tequila, the other spirits, it all of a sudden becomes a little bit more sales, marketing, business, glitz and glamour. You know what I mean? It's just like you don't have quite the relationships into that area. Did you find that when you were making?
It's really, so we were in vodka, at the time, and it was a very different. You're right. It's a very different. It's a very different community. Again, the whole spirits industry is actually still at one level quite small, but then it really does break down. And I've certainly found that the bourbon industry, the whiskey industry is much closer knit. The bourbon industry, absolutely. But even at the time, so we started that company out of a 2-bedroom apartment on the Lower East Side of New York in 2006. This was pre-craft spirits. This was really right at the early stages of the craft cocktail movement. In fact, I'll tell you, it's funny, when we started, and it was a product at the time was called Pink Vodka, and right before we sold the company, we had developed an entire line of caffeinated products. It was a flavorless caffeine and guarana formula infused into exceptional spirits. And so we developed a tequila, a rum, a sake, and we did a white whiskey with Hudson. Remember, in New York, was one of the original craft distilleries, and we went up there early on, and we were sourcing their White Dog, which was just delicious. And so we had made a caffeinated white whiskey, and this was like really, really early before any of this. And so, but yes, I mean, to your point, it was a very different kind of group of people and interaction. I think that's still very much the case today. There is no doubt that the whiskey industry, and particularly the bourbon industry, and particularly in Kentucky, it is a really tight knit and collaborative and cordial working group.
Okay, yeah, that's answered my question. So you were into that, and then you met the group of people that eventually started Bardstown Bourbon Company. So
well, I didn't meet them. We were all working together at the time, and Peter Lofton, who became my business partner, was the main investor early on in Bardstown, and so we were working on a whiskey project, and were introduced to him actually through a college roommate of mine who was a fraternity brother, who was an attorney of his, and he wanted to get into the whiskey industry. And so he invested with us, and we developed what, were the early stages of Bardstown. We came out with the idea that we wanted to build a distillery. We actually, at the time, it was very funny. We looked at a number of different places. We looked at the idea of maybe buying an older distillery and rehabbing it. We looked at a number of the properties we looked at property that ultimately became Castle and Key. We looked at a couple of really interesting things, but we ultimately decided that building something from scratch was, not only was it more cost effective, but again, that as we developed the business, and it wasn't until I moved to Bardstown and we really kind of got firmly ingrained here that we began to kind of see the evolution of the business. It's not as if we started day one and it was as if we all sat down and said, here's the idea, this is what we're going to go do. It was something that developed and evolved over time. And so Dan and I had gotten involved in whiskey after we sold the vodka company. We got very involved in a number of different projects and started seeing, again, this was 2009, 2010, where whiskey was headed. We were involved in the early stages of what ultimately became Hillhaven Lodge, which is no longer on the market, that Brett Ratner put out with Diageo. We worked on that project in its first year of its evolution. And we did a lot of research into whiskey. And so we really saw where things were going. And then when we came to Bardstown, I came out to Bardstown for the first time in 2013. And we saw the property, we bought the property, we developed, a wonderful early relationship with leadership here. We hired Steve Malley. And it was, as we did that, we got the idea for the collaborative distilling program because we were living in the market, we were part of the market, we saw what brands were needing, the contracts were getting cut off with the big guys because they needed to keep the capacity. And we were building this facility, and we said, why can't we, provide a service here that exists in every other industry, but does not exist in whiskey, which was complete custom whiskey production at the time. And I went out, I sold that concept, and we sold the distillery out, the capacity of the distillery, before we had even finished building it. And then we had to figure out how to actually do it. That is honestly one of the stories that is probably least known about Bardstown. And it's also one that led to, the evolution. It's what has, led to Whiskey House, because we learned this business. We learned, everything that we took from what we created at Bardstown. And when you very rarely in life have the opportunity to take something and do it all over again, with all of the lessons that you've learned. And that is what we have been able to do. And it's really a wonderful opportunity.
Well, that's really cool that you said that, because that's exactly what this feels like to, and it's funny, in any other industry, it's tough to, you build something successful and then someone comes and buys it and they keep it going. But then to have an industry where you can then do that's such a, it's like most of the time, if you sell your clothing line, they're not going to let you come out with another clothing line under the same, and then trash that clothing line. But that's what bourbon and whiskey is doing right now. That's what you're kind of doing. But at the same time, it's not that big of a deal because you're going to meet a demand that throughout history has never been met. It's just like
I think that's absolutely right, and there's plenty of room, in the market for many different players in this industry. But what we're doing at Whiskey House really solves a very unique problem in the marketplace. And as I mentioned, I think when we were chatting before, we started the podcast. I think fundamentally, for me, business has to be transformative for me. That's what excites me. The business has to be transformative. You have to really have a purpose, and you have to solve a problem. And so, Whiskey House has both of those elements. And that's one of the things that's so exciting. And of course, having the opportunity to work with John Hargrove, who was my business partner in this, who was the COO of Bardstown Bourbon Company, who was absolutely responsible for that distilling operation and what you see there. When he joined us in 2017 for Barton and took us from 25,000 to 50,000 to 100,000, HACCP certification, ISO certification. He led and built that team. And then Dan Lind, who was the financial, mastermind behind that. So the three of us were able to get together about 2 years ago, and we said, there is a fundamental issue in the marketplace now, and the need for what we started with the collaborative distilling program, the need to be able to continue to evolve that and take it to the next level is needed now more than ever. And so, that problem really, I'd present it this way. So over the past couple of years, you've had consolidation, in a contract distilling market. Bardstown and Green River are now owned by the same private equity firm. You have Wilderness Trail was sold to Campari, and its contract customers were all kind of told to exit upon that sale. And then you have what I would call the pure investor barrel. And so that is something that has developed over the last several years. This is institutional money coming in and buying liquid without a clear pathway to where it's going to go. And that's because people were seeing whiskey appreciate at really high numbers. So what has that done? So we have a lot of new fill capacity that is going towards these barrels, pure investor barrels, where they're buying it, holding it. It's driven pricing up. It's caused barrel pricing to go up. It's taken up capacity for brands that really need this. And so brands that really need exceptional customer service, long-term contracts that they can guarantee, in a facility that is focused on them. Because when you were producing contract in a facility that's making its own brands and running hospitality, there's always an inherent conflict of interest. Are you focused on me? Are you focused on your brands and what happens when you sell? Am I going to go the way of what happened with Wilderness Trail? And so you have all of these kind of conflicts, and the brands are saying, look, we just want, great production. And so Whiskey House solves that by coming forward now we have designed a facility from scratch to do nothing but custom whiskey production. So even when we did Bardstown, we built it, we added this on, we added that on, we added here, we added there. You don't necessarily design the same facility when you say, you know what, we know exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to design it from scratch. And so we have the ability to do that. We're taking the principles of advanced food manufacturing, which is the industry that John originally came from before joining Barton. It's a background of Quaker Oats and Frito-Lay and PepsiCo. And so we have designed an absolutely state-of-the-art facility that is focused on doing the highest quality, most efficient, large-scale, but flexible contract custom whiskey production for an exclusive group of brands, no pure investor barrels, in a facility where we guarantee long-term contracts. There's no hospitality for the public. It's not open to the public. So think Willy Wonka of whiskey manufacturing in a facility that is on, property that has a fully enclosed campus. But the most exciting part of Whiskey House is the technological backbone that the facility is built on. So we are taking distilling to where advanced food manufacturing has been for the last decade. and that is in data collection, data development and analysis, high efficiency manufacturing. So what you're going to see come out of Whiskey House is really going to be a thought leader and an industry leader in advanced manufacturing in distilling for whiskey.
It's exciting and amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if somebody was to buy Whiskey House, they're buying the way it is. They're not going to be like you were saying with Bardstown. Now that they have a brand, not only are you buying the contract distilling, but you're also buying the Bardstown Bourbon Company brand. And if you were somebody else, you could decide to go whatever direction you wanted. You can change everything, but this model is set up so that it's long term. So if somebody was actually, if you down the line, someone bought it, they would be buying exactly what it's set up to be. That's kind of what.
Yeah, and I'll start with just a very clear proposition here. Whiskey House will not be sold. Whiskey House is owned by myself, John, and Dan. There's no private equity in the business. We love this business. This is something that we plan to do for the rest of our careers. We really enjoy it, and so there's nothing more that I love than working, directly with our customers and giving them that kind of customer service. We built that culture originally. At Bardstown, look, every business changes when the founders, leave a business. It happens everywhere.
Right. And
so, for us, that energy, that passion, that excitement, that is part of every aspect of this. And the beauty, with this facility is that we're not focused on our own brands. So we get to put all of our energy into innovative liquid production. That's where the focus is. And why is it so important? Because for our customers and for brands, at the end of the day, differentiation is going to be a driving factor going forward. There is so much liquid that is all the same now that is out there from these investor barrels. It's going to be coming into the market with no clear pathway as to where it's going. And what do brands need? Brands need innovation. They need very innovative liquid, and they need to be able to create it in a facility that they can do it cost effectively, that is completely flexible, with a team that will make anything that they want to make. And so that's really important. And so we were never able to take Bardstown to that level. So we're really excited about being able to do that, now, because, again, this, the kind of technology that you're able to put in when you start from scratch, is incredible because, when it's an older business, you have something called technical debt, right? And it becomes too expensive to be able to get, for example, all of the systems to talk to each other. But if you start with that, we're making, huge investments. It's a $110 million project starting day one, in phase one, first phase of the building, with a significant amount of that for the technology side. So imagine, at the end of the day, not only are we able to give the customer all the information at their fingertips, that they need about their production, their portal, their inventory, their financials, but you're able to then be able to take a single barrel at the end of the day and look back and be able to have all of the data from where the grain came from, where the barrels came from, all the manufacturing data from, the enzymes and the yeast, to the manufacturing specs, all the way through to ultimately being able to see the barrels in 3D in the warehouses, be able to have the conditions in the warehouses, all of that data. We have written, thousands and thousands of lines of code with great engineering team and firm. Our engineering team is led by Roger Henley, who's a former head engineer at Bardstown. John Hargrove, leads as a president and COO, leads the operation. We got amazing people joining the team. Jim Hunger, who ran operations at Beam and at Barton. And we're starting to put together what will be the best team, hands down, in whiskey, I have no doubt. That the team that is going to join, that we are going to assemble, if you were an A team operator and you really fit, hold yourself in high regard in terms of your skill set, Whiskey House is going to be the place for you because we have a culture that we are building. Of course, salary and benefits package, it has to be the best. But in terms of, a operating culture and infrastructure for the employees is going to be second to none. Because we know you have to have that in order to build a customer service oriented team that ultimately is going to deliver for our customers, which are, some of the best brands, in the country and the world.
That's so. As far as the actual, what would you say, public access, are you planning like to be open to like for distillery tours, or it's just a production facility? The only thing you're kind of building is the aspect of bringing brands in, and then where they can be tasting where it's, as it ages in the labs and everything. That's what you guys are
The brands will be able to, the brands, we have special facilities that we are building inside for the brands. The brands are going to be able to bring their sales teams in, their distributors, all of those components. But in terms of the public, the facility is closed. It's actually extremely secure, completely fenced with great security protocol. It's important because, we'll have hundreds of millions of dollars of people's inventory in there. And frankly, it's crazy if it's not all completely fenced in and secure. Not all facilities are. We have just sort of assumed over the years that, they know nothing's going to happen. Every now and then you do have little things, but the fact of the matter is, we would never treat any other inventory without this kind of security. So it's a completely secure facility. What I will tell you that we are looking at for the future, which is exciting, is we will, at the right point in the right place, have whiskey house tasting rooms. We actually can have 2 of them under the Kentucky law, where we'll be able to showcase the products that we produce, and so that we will operate as a great benefit to our customers that are part of the program. So that will be an added benefit that you get to enjoy, but they will not be on site. The law in Kentucky now allows you to have one within 10 miles of the facility and then another one anywhere else in the state. So we plan to take full advantage of that.
Utilize it, yeah, to be able to taste the product. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe you have a podcast room.
maybe. Maybe. Probably not.
That's probably not. All right.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see at the festival.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There's a lot of other places to do the promotion and that type of stuff. So,
Absolutely.
So that's awesome news. You're opening up in July, right? Now, the other question. So after Bardstown, the whole thing goes down. Were you guys from the get-go, was it just an offer that you couldn't refuse, or did they come approach you? How did the whole Bardstown Bourbon thing go?
That's something that is confidential, that I really can't get into those details on this podcast. But I'll tell you, the sale of Bardstown was one of those moments, like in anything with any business. It's always kind of has, especially for the founders of a business, it has its like exciting and happy moments. There's always a kind of loss component, because it's going in a different direction. But it's for me, it was a wonderful opportunity, and it gave us the wherewithal to be able to do what we're doing right now. So I look at all of it extremely positively. It's such a wonderful team that we built at Bardstown. Many of those people that are there, are ones that I hired personally, that we hired, and it's great to see them continuing to flourish, continuing to do great. As I said, there is so much room in this industry. We see everything growing, continuing to grow. Look, it's going to have its ups and downs. We know we've got some, headaches coming out of COVID, but these are short term in many ways. In my personal opinion, I think the long term prospects for the bourbon industry in general are extremely favorable. I mean, unless everyone is wrong. And so, Heaven Hill's doubling, Brown-Forman's doubling, Diageo, you just go on. They're doubling, and it's not just for domestic growth, it's for international growth. And so while, the market may go like this over time, it's going to go like this, but it's going to end up, in that upward trajectory. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, honestly, as the liquid keeps getting produced more, even now, I can see the results of the push, 7-8 years ago when it was first and the distilleries were, 2012, probably right at that point is when they all were like, well, we better start making, and then every year they were making more and more and more. And then their predictions they still weren't getting enough liquid to the market. And just this past year, I feel that it's starting to, it's the stuff is, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people can't have and always wanted to get, and they're starting to be able to obtain it without having to pay, astronomical secondary prices. So that you can notice that there's some stuff on the shelves, people, wait in line for the specific stuff, but at the same time, there's 10 other bottles in there that you could buy that's probably better than what you're waiting for. So as as everybody knows, it's always about what we can't have.
Right. That's right. I think that actually applies to like all of life.
Yes. We all want what we can't have. And then when we get it, we just want to find something else we can't have, right? So
that's right.
And
that's right.
The industry's been doing a good job of coming out with limited editions and that type of thing. And it's where this goes down in the time period of whiskey, and you're part of it, is that this was the time where all the old distilleries and all the old brands there's enough money to bring them back. There's enough money to make new brands and set up and revamp all the equipment, and everybody knows eventually there'll be another time when, when everybody, there's, certain time periods all the time where they'll be in charge of just watching over the inventory. But, I'm sure when Stitzel-Weller went out of business and the Van Winkles kept their inventory, they were really glad they did. So, because even now they don't put enough to market, right? But they're putting
it's all worked out. That's right.
23-year-old whiskey out to market every year. So, I mean, and that's a hard thing to do, especially in Kentucky, considering the yield of that barrel, So.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
All right, so you went from Bardstown and you had a moment at Kentucky Owl. So just talk about what that was like in between.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's great. And so I know the Stoley family and the owner of Stoley, personally. Going back early on, was part of helping introduce Dixon to them at the time. And then we got the contract at Bardstown to produce Kentucky Owl. It was one of our earliest contracts. They've always maintained a great relationship. So when I stepped back as CEO of Bardstown, Stoley had approached me and asked me if I would help them reposition and try to get the Kentucky Owl project here back on track. And frankly, it's absolutely beautiful project. It was one that I was extremely familiar with day one. There are wonderful groups that are involved in it. That it was basically a year. And having the opportunity to work with Bourbon, which is one of the best architecture firms in the world, one of the most creative, just some exceptional people. And it was ultimately the former CEO of Stoley, Damian McKinney, who I knew very well in the past, that convinced me to come and join them. And I live here in Bardstown. I love that project. I want to see it succeed. And I stayed there. We reworked the project. We got it on a different trajectory. And then when Bardstown sold, I had to tell them, I had something else that I needed to do now. Yeah. And so we brought in Lorenzo, who is great. He is overseeing the project right now. And it's getting there.
Lorenzo's a great guy.
These things. Isn't Lorenzo amazing?
Sure,
he's wonderful. He's a perfect person for it. And look, I think it has all of the right elements, to succeed. It's like a lot of things. Just these things sometimes take time. And so I couldn't, say more wonderful things about the group that I worked with there. And again, like everything, I wish them the best of luck. We just had their whole team here during the Bourbon Festival. They released the bottle that's sitting right in front of you. They're continuing to make some, wonderful things, and great expressions. I still think it's one of the, the great bourbon brands out there. It's truly iconic. Dixon did a wonderful job in creating that. Sully's done a really nice job in extending, with these, with some of the innovations. And so, I look forward to seeing them all again at this year's.
One of the bottles when you were there.
Yeah, the Takumi edition. It's a great one. They're really just amazing blends. Some great.
Yeah.
When you put really creative people together, they do very neat things.
Well, Dixon almost did too good of a job because that was hard.
That's right.
When he left, it was just like the community there. But I think they've done a really nice job while you were there. There's no doubt. That's one of the things that was happening, and then going forward, like you said, that piece of property is just what they want to do with it. There's a lot of it. It's like I see what you're doing, and you're talking July, and I swear to God, but it was just announced. It was in my brain a month ago, and now all of a sudden you're talking July, and then with them you see it, and we're still, they're still trying.
I know, but look, let's listen. I'll tell you what we're doing at Whiskey House is unheard of in terms of speed, and the reason we're able to do it is a function of a couple things. First, John Hargrove, who is absolutely incredible in every respect in terms of not only designing and managing the construction of this facility. I know you guys don't look at me thinking that I'm responsible for managing the day in and day out of that project. That all of the credit goes to John there. And the second piece of that equation is Busick Construction. And so we created that relationship, and I'll never forget it. I met Busick the first day, basically, I came to Bardstown. And we were starting to look around at construction firms, and we were introduced to them, and we had, our attorneys were saying, look at the big guys. These are the big guys. They build them. And I was introduced to Tommy Blanco and the Donald Blanco, and they were building, all the rich houses at the time in the state. They still do. They worked on basically on every distillery project, but they had not built a distillery from scratch. And Tommy sat me down. He said, David, we can build this. We'll do it. We'll be fair. We'll work in a very close team together. We won't go. We'll get it on time. We'll keep it on budget. And that's what we did. And we did that with a handshake. And I'll tell you that meeting, there's still a Wednesday construction team meeting, which I ran every week. And then, of course, when John came in, he took it over, and I sat in it and added where I could. But that Wednesday meeting still exists, and you're now a decade later. And so that relationship was critical for us. It was critical for Busick. Busick went on then to get the Luxor contract, Log Still, Jim Beam Stillhouse, Heaven Hill, the new distillery. I mean, this goes on and on. And so they have so many exciting projects. And when it came time to build Whiskey House, Tommy Blanco always said to me, if you need anything, David, you call. Never took him up on that, although we always had some really funny jokes that we were going to play on him for that. But I called him up and I said, remember, now I need it. And we did. We got the A-team, and with John and with him and the team we have assembled, they're able to move at light speed. We designed the facility while we were acquiring the property, at the same time as we are purchasing equipment before we have it designed, so we can get way ahead of the schedules. That's how we got everything way ahead. We got all the vendor, all the equipment's in the facility and hooked up already.
Yeah. Which is insane. I mean, I know a lot of people that are 2 years out on Vendo, but yeah,
you hear a lot of stories from a lot of other distilleries and stuff, and they're backlogged at Vendome, whereas, like I say, you guys jumped way ahead of the game. And
we jumped ahead of it, and we did, and we were able, again, this is because of John and because of the team, the construction team. We are able to work that way. It's non-traditional. you really, I can't even imagine any other circumstances where if you didn't have that trust level, you wouldn't be able to do it. They are wonderful, wonderful people. It is a family-owned business. And it really is honestly a testament to, again, what we were talking about before the podcast started, which is the importance of, being part of the local community and giving back and living here. I mean, it's so important, to business, because had that not been the case, we wouldn't be able to do this. It wouldn't be possible.
I mean, it is technically what you're talking about. It's like the family that of the bourbon industry and everybody and their relationships. I mean, it's just insane. I was there in 2019 for Kentucky Bourbon Fest. First time I was ever down, and I remember going to Bardstown, and it basically was the distillery in the field with the rick house. and maybe two. There might have been two, but I don't.
We had a couple at that time.
But when you got off the highway, you could see it, and what the main thing that stuck out was in the middle of everything was the patio with the furniture and the fireplaces, but there was really that was all that was there. I mean,
that's it. We had just opened the restaurant, at that time. We had in 2019 we were open probably 6-7 months, but it was it really had just gotten going. That was early 2019. But you're right. And then you go out there today. When I stepped down, we had designed a bottling facility. We were ready to break ground on that. That was all done. We had basically every inch of that property laid out. The only thing that's one of the fundamental differences from where we were taking it, and from where it went after the founders stepped back, is we had the hotel deal basically done. We were putting a hotel right across from the distillery. A beautiful concept. It would have looked, mimicked what that distillery looks like. So it would have been about an 80-room hotel with, rooftop, garden, spa. Frankly, I think it would have been, from a hospitality standpoint, an absolute game changer. You're seeing it coming. Makers is doing a little bit of it. But, when we talk about, constant evolution, and pushing the boundaries of the business, those are the kinds of things that, that are exciting, to me. And that was our next project.
Yeah, I think Log still has that hotel in the.
Dude, they have the cabins. They have, but we have
the Airbnbs, yeah.
But the thing that's going to be closest to what we were going to be doing at Bardstown is coming now, and it's the Trail Hotel. And so keep an eye out for this. This is Will and Alicia Hardy. They are newcomers to Bardstown that came here in the last it's been now almost 2 years, maybe a little bit more. But they bought the old Holiday Inn property that's out right on the Bluegrass. It's under construction now. It is going to be an absolutely beautiful facility, and it's going to be an incredible addition. This is going to be the first hotel of this size, caliber, quality here for the bourbon tourist.
Well, yeah, and
it is needed.
I would say that is one thing that's needed, and you knew based off of what you were doing at Bardstown Bourbon Company with that. Yes, there's no doubt. There's a lot of what would you say? I wouldn't say it's subpar, but average stays there, where everything else is way above average and high experience, where that just doesn't make sense that you don't. Okay, because
we're making. That's right. We're making headway. What we've gotten. The first thing that needed to be done in Bardstown was get the rooms. So what we had is we had new lodging. So at more of a business like traveler level, which is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's needed, and we needed it all. And now what you're seeing is more boutique. So Bardstown Motor Lodge, I was involved in that project and bringing that in. So you're getting a little bit more of kind of the unique, experience. You get the restaurant, you get the pool, the bar. We took the We took it, an old 1950s motel, gave it a facelift, much like you see in Napa Valley. That was a great addition. The trail coming in, but a couple more of these. We have several more of these motor lodge style properties in Bardstown. I think, if you look in the future, you're going to see, those, what we did at the motor lodge, you're going to see more of that with those as well.
Well, it also seems like the younger crowd really loves that motor lodge,
They do.
Because they got the pool, and it's just that little, it's not a giant pool that you get at whatever, and they're all out there. And that you just at the festival, I found that, that late 20 early.
That was a fun place.
Yep. They were going at it all weekend. That's for sure.
No, it was a party at the Motor Lodge all weekend, and it was a lot of fun. And so, those kind of unique hospitality offerings, you're going to see more of that coming to Bardstown. You're going to see some tasting rooms showing up from other brands and other distilleries now that the law has allows that in Kentucky. So just you keep an eye out. We've got some great things. Evergreen Liquors came in on 3rd Street, put in a beautiful facility that is, frankly, is packed at night.
Yeah.
You go Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I mean, the tasting bar in there is great.
Around the corner thing, because I like that right the way it is. That's a secret.
We don't want to talk about the speakeasy.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
talk about the whole time. Yeah. Like that whole experience between the two was fantastic, and I think that's one thing that Bardstown is starting. You've got the level of what you guys have done, the Brindiamo, penthouse suite.
Penthouse. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then everything that's happening there, the level and experience is going up, and you're on the board for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. But I think also it's a year-round position. I mean, you guys are talking about the festival probably within a week or two of it and starting for the next year, but it also is very connected with all the distilleries and then all the hotels and restaurants around. And I really think that culture that you guys are developing through the festival, how you've taken that festival to another level. I mean, locally, as far as initially how it was, what you had to do, it was very difficult and rough on you guys. But I think as you keep going forward, and you can talk about this, that everybody's starting to see how awesome, even down to like the experience, the local experiences are being upped, like the lighting up of Bardstown always have been, but there's more places to go when you do that now, right?
Right. And look, change isn't easy anywhere, and in a small community, it also, particularly here. So, when we changed the festival, it was something, it had to be done. But, I look at what has happened with the festival. And so Randy Prossi, who we brought in, who has done absolutely an exceptional job running that. Sam Lacey, who runs the Bourbon Guild and the Bourbon Capital Community Alliance. That was, a organization that we created to help create ambassadors within the community. And that is, tied in and supported by the bourbon industry. So we get the guild working together with the festival in the same, occupying the same space, and Brindiamo coming in and supporting it. And you're seeing all of these things come together in these synergies, which are really incredible. Well, you know what I just noticed? My computer is about to die here. So I'm going to continue talking to you, but I'm going to disappear for a second and get the plug. Yeah. So hold on one second. All right. But that what you see is you see the community coming together in a physical space here. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm glad that you appreciate what has been created at the Brindiamo Penthouse. And frankly, Jeff Hopmeyer and Jeff Steinberg, who leads Brindiamo, they are extremely generous in the money that they donated to build that, to help us outfit our space, because we rely on those donations to be able to do that, and so that was really important.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's a really cool space.
Sure would.
We're going to change views here very quickly.
Okay.
So I'm going to walk with you. This is a little bit unusual here in terms of podcast. So there we go.
Oh, we've done it all. Don't worry. Actually, tonight's going pretty well as far as technical for us. That's for sure.
All right, great.
And thank you for not letting your computer die, because he would just be like,
No, that would not. That would not be fun.
I've done a podcast where the computer died, and then we're still live Facebook and we're still live on YouTube. So I had to go upstairs while they talked and get the cord, plug it in, and then the podcast software came back up and was still recording. I was just like, well, there was a gap, obviously, but it was.
Yeah,
so,
right, amazing.
We've done.
Usually when it does that, it makes me the host. Just sets him out and leaves a blank space there for a while.
Yeah.
But we work through it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's great.
All right. So, that sense of community, like even like you said, some of the people that work for, that are on part of Kentucky Bourbon Festival are also part of the guild. But just when you go to, you go to the festival or you go down to Bardstown, all those people are part of the community and are consistently out in the community promoting bourbon. Stacy,
and you know what? So I'm glad that you noticed that, because that was the purpose of creating the guild. And so, one of the things that we said when we created the Community Capital Alliance, and this goes back to a meeting that myself and Bill Samuels had in Houston, going back to 2015, 2016. And we said, we really need, the distilleries are making these investments. We really need Bardstown to help step up and invest as well, because we got to do this together. The opportunity's there. Louisville was launching its 5-year, plan at the time with Mayor Fisher. And we said, we have to have a plan here. We've got to create that for Bardstown. We need Bardstown to grow and invest alongside of the distilleries. And so, Kim jumped right to it too. We created the BCCA, which was the Bourbon Capital Community Alliance, which is funded by donations from the distilleries, with a mission to help do these things as well. And so creating a guild was one of those, where what we saw is we really wanted when people came to town, we wanted to make sure that there was a contingent here of people that were well-trained, well-educated on bourbon, loved it, served as ambassadors for the community, could go out and help. They're volunteers for the festival, like all of those things. That's what the guild created. And so the guild, we join the guild, and the distilleries help support it by creating those unique events. And then it becomes this group that is really on top of everything happening in bourbon. And you see it. And then of course, Jeff came in and helped us outfit our offices to create, a place for it. And it has educational facilities in it. So these things it's evolutionary, but it's happening. It's working. I'm so glad that you said that, because that is exactly the purpose. That is exactly why we created it.
Well, and then you see the distilleries themselves feeding off of it, but also it's so unique to see on a consistent basis the distillery people getting together. Like I see tons of photos with Stacy, and she's at Jim Beam, but then she's with someone with Heaven Hill. They're all interacting. They're all a part of all the different distilleries. But then there's events like, there's local. There was an event at Bardstown, an event at Preservation, where
we've got one coming up Thursday at Heaven Hill with the guild. I'll be there. I mean, it's great, and Sam has done an excellent job programming it. Because again, it's like one thing, you create these kinds of organizations and then they don't do anything and then they kind of like die. He has done an exceptional job working, keeping it active, finding really good things, working with the distilleries. And so, and now, over time we'll be expanding the membership so that more people can get involved in it. So it's great.
Well, and then you'll also see Freddie No at one of them at Heaven. They're not. You see that family of distilleries, and then every once in a while you'll see Jimmy Russell come down or whatever. But when you go to Louisville, you don't see that Old Forester interacting. They're all kind of separate up there, how it is. But then in Frankfurt, you've got a lot of stuff going on there, but you don't get that intertwining of community between the distilleries. I've never been at a place where let's just say Bruce Russell was there, and then Harlan Wheatley. They just aren't hanging out all together in Frankfurt like the community does in Bardstown. If we go out with Sandy No and she sees everybody, I mean everybody from everywhere, because most of the people, like, I think what it is most of the people have worked at multiple distilleries. So they might have worked at Jim Beam, but now they're at Heaven Hill, or they're and so because it's so intertwined, the community now has you guys have created so much to do. There's a lot to do. They're not just, it's a small town, and a lot of times, I think maybe even 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of not so much going on, and now there's always something going on.
And now there's so much going on, and even the same people that are involved in the industry are also opening up businesses. Busey Construction, Donald, he opened with his business partner, Scout and Scholar, incredible brewery. You walk in there, you think that this business has been here forever. They opened that 3 years ago now, and they opened that business to give back to the community, and that was one of Donald's and his family's contributions to say, we're going to build this. And David Jones, who's also in the industry, is his partner in it. We're going to do this, and we're going to give back. And you have just seen, just right for the festival, Newman Miller, who ran the restaurant at Makers, who is a staple, in the culinary side of the industry, just opened up Mr. Tubbs, which is the old laundromat here. I mean, I just went by tonight. They've got a party, an event going on there. They got the pizza oven going on outside. I mean, it was rocking. And, these are the things, that are happening.
Yeah. I mean, Denny Potter, when we were down there, Denny Potter was there. Lisa Roper Wicker was there. Her daughter runs it, I believe.
Yes, that's right. That's Rachel. And Rachel was also a board member when we reconstituted the board for the festival. Rachel was part of the original board team when I started as chairman that helped make all the changes. Rachel played an important role in that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. The whole, like I said, the whole community. There's a lot of things I learned this past festival of what I want to do after the festival. I'll throw it if Stacy's still watching. Basically, I'm just going to tailor.
I mean, you couldn't have a better person. Stacy joined the festival. She has been a tremendous addition to the team. You've obviously had a wonderful, you've had a great opportunity to work with her. She's got energy. She's connected to the community. She's bringing everybody together. You're tailing the right person if you want to go out in Bardstown.
Well, yeah, we're going to be coming down there. I think we're going to be in Louisville on Saturday. So I'm going to be trying to, because who has residence in Bardstown and Louisville? That's the girl. The girl is connected, and her Louisville is just all about the festival and all the connections. So yeah, definitely she laughed. She put a ha ha.
What's even better is that she's actually watching us. That's the other thing.
She watches us. I think she usually chimes in when we do these podcasts, and if she
it's great. I say that jokingly.
Somewhere else, but she'll chime in. That's for sure. All right, so let's finish up. What kind of just tell us the whole thing about just wrap up what's about to happen in July. The marketing.
It's a very quiet. You don't see, Whiskey House advertising, doing that kind of work. We have relationships with the brands, with the customers, are long term. Much of what we do is word of mouth. It's a very exclusive group of companies and brands that come, into us. We're very selective in terms of who we work with, but we've got an incredible customer base. We've got a list, a waiting list too of others for our services. We're sorting through some of that as we go forward here. We've got expansion plans for 27, but like any good business, the most important thing is to do a handful of things really well and right. That's what we're focused on. We're focused on getting open, developing the business, working with our customers, fulfilling all the promises that you heard me mention when we opened this segment. And so that's a lot. And so that will be our focus. And you'll continue to hear from us. While we won't be open to the public, while we won't have press inside the facility, we'll certainly be looking forward to telling you about what's happening. And you'll hear about a lot of the exciting things that are taking place at Whiskey House. We're also going to be big supporters of the festival going forward. You'll see us there. I absolutely believe in the festival. The time that we put into it, and we will support that as a business too.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to have you on the board, still on the board. I mean, that's just great. And then Nash, do you have any questions before we go?
No, I think he's pretty much covered everything. It's been great. Everything that I had in mind to ask, you pretty much covered, and I'm just excited and looking forward to the future of Whiskey House. And I do have one question. In July, are we going to invite for the grand opening? We'd love to do that. We'd love to come up there live.
Well, that would be great if we have a public facing for that. We will absolutely include you for that. But I'd also like to say, first of all, just thank you on a couple of fronts. Thank you for having me on tonight. Obviously, very much so. Also, you guys, the work that you do. We talked all of this time about supporting the industry and all of that. Your podcast, your efforts. I don't think there's enough credit given to the kinds of things that and many of your many of your colleagues do as well, in terms of you guys play an important role not only in getting the word out, keeping people interested, keeping people engaged, serving as a kind of conduit between the brands and the consumer, being able to provide a forum to talk about things, to be able to to criticize. This is all like really healthy stuff. You need to be able to do this. And so, I really appreciate the role you guys play. It's also why we were so excited to have you involved in the festival. And, please just, keep up the good work. And if there's anything that we can do, I can do, you just, let us know.
Oh, wow. Thanks so much. That's really means a lot coming from you, David. And we really do appreciate it.
It's absolutely the truth. And, it should be said more often. I think in the industry, we kind of sort of take these things for granted, and this whole industry that has popped up and supported all of us, from the podcast to the Instagram. But it's true. I mean, it's supporting the industry in many ways.
I work for my cousin in recycling. I'm the plant manager, so I understand from a plant manager standpoint of when I go into a distillery. It's almost, besides, I mean, the hydraulics, grinders, almost all of them. The motors are the same. The problems are definitely the same, but also the way things go and how the whiskey buying public perceives certain things, like somehow because the liquid is in shortage, there's so many accusations. But when you get to meet the people like yourself and the people making that directly, and you can you understand what they're trying to do and they tell you about the problems, and then also I know about problems, like when you're building something, or it just doesn't turn on and there's no problems. I mean, it just getting something going is very it's a very difficult and stressful thing to do. And but the more people and the better people you have working on it, the better the project goes. But like you said, you learned on your first project, and now that you're doing it this way, you've met so many other people, and you've kind of been. But I'm sure it's not 100%. But just with that said, knowing what it really is, and then have someone in the line while you're waiting tell you how it is, and you just kind of smile. So that's what we try and do with this, is kind of bring to the people out there some sort of perspective to the industry, that it's not just a scam to make a marketing ploy to just make money. Now, I mean, some people earn it honestly, but for the most part, I find in bourbon, I mean, you talk to the distillers and everything, and they're interested in making whiskey, and they'll fight for the quality of the whiskey, opposed to
Right.
it's a fight. But that's what we try and do. So I appreciate you
Well,
acknowledging that.
well, absolutely. Thank you. And thanks for doing it.
All right.
And that, to me,
Stand with
I try to like to bring a balance between the two, of to let the people know between the making the money, and also to uh, let the backstory of the work, and the people, all of the great people that I've met that's involved in their stories, and the passion that each and every one, I mean, all the way down to the person that's grinding that grain, to unloading that grain, or delivering that grain. Each one, it seems like they have a passion, to making whiskey, and bringing them all together, and being able to help tell their story, and get it out there to the whiskey and bourbon lovers and enthusiasts, is just kind of a little bit of a benefit to me. And
Well, it's great. It's absolutely great. And thank you for doing it. I mean, because there's so many wonderful stories, and so many people that are involved in the
Absolutely.
process that don't get the recognition. But,
Absolutely.
they play extremely important roles, in the whole health of the industry.
Well, what you're doing with Whiskey House of Kentucky is really cool, because your backstory is you, and there's no romantic something happened that you guys are responsible about. If somebody's going to restore a brand, that's on them, and you basically make good whiskey for them and the way they want it made. And so it's a great idea, and so I look forward to what's
Thank
happening.
you. We'll look forward to sharing more with you, as we progress here.
Absolutely, and thanks for sharing some of the insight and the stories, all the way back from New York, and everything, and how you got here today. So, real interesting, and amazing stuff, and I'm sure a lot of listeners out there enjoyed it too. And just thanks again for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right,
All right.
everybody, we'll wrap this one up. We're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Thank you, Dan. Oh my God, Dave.
It's okay.
Where my head is, I don't know. But anyways, and thanks, Super Nash. Remember www.scotchybourbonboys.com for all Scotchy Bourbon Boys things, like our Scotchy Bourbon Boys Glencairns, and also our t-shirts and bourbon balls. With that, remember, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X, and then all the major podcast formats. Remember, like, listen, subscribe, and leave good feedback. Remember, good bourbon equals good times and good friends. Make sure you drink responsibly, don't drink and drive, and live your life dangerously. Little Steve-O's gonna take us out.
All right.
show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you, I tell you we must die.
All right, I stopped recording, but we're still live on Facebook and YouTube. I'll just take us off that once I save this. But David, we really appreciate that and your time tonight. Sure. I know that you're busy.
It's my pleasure.
I do like your changed backdrop. You know that.
Oh, thank you. I just moved myself around in the room here.
Yeah, for sure. And we look forward to everything. I'd like to just stay in contact with you. I usually Randy usually keeps me abreast of everything that's going on, and he always talks so highly of yours and his relationship. And I think at one point he's like,
"It's a wonderful one."
He goes, "That's my boss."
Oh yeah, he chimed in a few times tonight. Yeah. Usually we kind of pick up on a lot of the comments and all the people chiming in tonight, but
no,
Greg Snyder
does an incredible job. Greg is wonderful.
Yeah, and he said a lot of
so many different capacities.
He said a lot of great things about you, and first meeting you back in 2016. You know, and
appreciate it. Your restaurant. Greg is somebody who appreciates good food. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. He's introduced us to some great restaurants over the years. So
yeah, he was a great customer. He loved being there.
So where was the original restaurant in Elizabethtown?
No. The original Bardstown that was where it is right now in the facility. What was different about it was, the whole kind of ambiance and environment in the restaurant. So it was open for dinner. So it was open at night. We stayed open at almost 1 o'clock in the morning. So that on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday when we first opened it it was absolutely special. And the menu was completely different at the time too. We had developed a menu that we really worked on trying to create. This goes back to this whole discussion about the importance of the community. We wanted a place that brought the community together at an elevated level. So it was simple but exceptional food. We designed the menu so it was, and I actually still have the original menu, and I did it with my significant other. We went and she and I we put all the different things that we wanted to have on this menu, and the idea was that you wanted every single thing on the menu. Because the one thing that always makes me crazy in restaurants is I go into a really good restaurant and I look at the menu and I'm like, I know it's great, but I actually don't want anything on the menu. Whether it's too complicated or it's like, I really like that. But we wanted, the most incredible comfort food too. And so we had, in that original menu, it just had these amazing dishes. And so when it first opened, the idea was we wanted to balance it. So you could be two people coming in to Bardstown, from Bardstown, and you could have a great dinner, for $25, $30 together. You could have a pour for $5, or you could spend $2,500 if you wanted to get into the Vintage Library. You could have a glass of wine, for $10 or $8, but you could also get a bottle that was $1,000. We had items that really worked for everyone, and the restaurant was not designed to make money. It was a marketing expense. We lost money on the restaurant. There was no way to run what we ran at the time with the 20, 25 students from South Africa that we were housing, we were bringing in, the culinary experience that we created, and everybody at the restaurant at the time was incentivized to ensure that no one left without having a great experience, because the experience, it brought people in. It was the best marketing dollar we could spend. It brought people in. It captivated them. They then bought our product. First of all, they got a favorable opinion. Then they were introduced to our product. Then they bought it. And they went out and told everybody about it. You just keep repeating that experience over and over and over. And the most magical things that happened at that time, because I was there all night too, we would run tours through the distillery at 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. We'd take groups through. We would have people in the lab. We had this is back before we built the vintage whiskey bar. We had all the vintage whiskey that we had acquired in a cage in the back, as we were acquiring it with Fred Minnick. That was a totally unique experience when you went back to the cage. And so this stuff happened all night long, and John Harlow would come over, and we had, at the time, Dan Calloway joined. When I hired Dan was the general manager at a restaurant in Louisville, and he and the other two team members, Sam Montgomery, and her significant other, and then there was one other woman, Randy Densford. We brought them in, they were full salary, and the whole idea is they were going to help us build the beverage program, then they were going to go on to help us build the visitors experience. And so it was not just an hourly wage, you were a component of the industry, and they all did that. They all took that position, and he made that opportunity into a career. Yeah. Sam has gone on to do some great things. Randy was out running a whole operation out at Hermitage Farm. So people have done some really incredible things, and but it was an amazing time. And as I mentioned earlier, and I said the story of Bardstown, the story about an incredible group of people that came together in this moment in time and created that place. That's what it was. Yeah. That was what so special about that place.
There's a place up here, it's Gervasi Vineyards, and they also have a still, and they're making 3 restaurants. They've got they built caves, spa, the house, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame books them every year. That's where the football players, and they throw exquisite parties, and it's known for its wedding venue aspect, but the restaurants are set up where you can have flatbreads. 2 people can eat for 2 flatbreads. The same kind of thing that you're talking about. They've got that kind of going for the local people, and they just keep growing.
It's so funny you say. I just remember this. We did a porterhouse steak. It was for 2 people. It was huge, and we sold it for $60. And it was one of those things that we actually lost money basically on every one we made, and it was so popular that because if you had a steak like that, it'd be like $125 easily, in the city, New York. And this is pre-COVID times. Like, I can't even imagine what that would. And we had at one point, I remember our head of the restaurant came and was like, "Dave, we gotta change the price of the steak. Everyone's ordering this. We can't even make them. We've got like 10 orders a night for the porterhouse." And so, you have those funny moments, too, dishes, and everybody came down and ate, and we would test them. And so, that's how we worked through developing the menu. We just cooked it, and then the J-Runs, we ran it much more like a corporate operation in terms of defined recipes. And we had some great people that we brought in to help us, but defined recipes that could be absolutely repeated each time exactly the same way. And so as they trained, everybody ate. And I remember Dan, as a CFO, it's like, "Hey, you have to stop feeding everybody in the restaurant. These bills are insane." Right? Nope, just keep doing it. Keep going. Keep going. We're going to get this right. Oh, but it was so much fun. It really was fun.
Oh, wow. That's great.
That's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
So
thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks.
Again, David. All right.
Take us quick off Facebook right here.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody on Facebook. All right.
So one
thing I noticed is real quick on the Facebook thing. I think it had my last name as Mandela. We might need to change that. Not that I wouldn't want to be
really?
Have a Facebook profile.
No, I will change it and everything. I knew that when I first did it. It's weird.
Yep. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah,
It's nothing wrong. I mean, it would be wonderful to be related to Nelson, but I'm not.
I mean, I actually had it with one L earlier, and and I noticed it was two L's. So I'm on the YouTube.
It's okay. If you put it in there, I'll come up. I've got a profile in there.
No. I can edit that. That is not a problem. Let's see.
It's no worries. I noticed it.
When I did, edit poll.
Funny, guys.
All right. I'm not going to do it yet. It must. All right. Yeah, I'll get it edited. I'm going to take us off.
Yeah, no worries.
Take us off right here.